The record-smashing 2020 hurricane season has given birth to a new storm.
The 2020 hurricane season set a record for the most named storms, 30 in all. At one point, a major hurricane threatened Houston. Then Laura veered into Louisiana.
Whoa, that is a very strong gust.
Making landfall south of Lake Charles with 150-mile-per-hour winds.
Look at that. That's just pieces of the roof flying everywhere.
You can see the eye right now starting to close out of the Cameron area and now pushing toward the Lake Charles area.
The Houston area was spared, but the truth is, it could happen here.
Eye on the Gulf, It Could Happen Here is sponsored by Kroger. Kroger sponsors the Hurricane Tracker because we care about your safety. American Risk Insurance. Large enough to compete, small enough to care. Goya Foods. If it's Goya, it has to be good. And Air Team. For all your heating and cooling needs, let Air Team be your team.
2020's hurricane season smashed a number of records, the most jaw-dropping being the 12 landfalls along the U.S. coastline. For the first time in history, all 3,613 miles of coast from Texas to Maine were put under some kind of tropical watch or warning. 9 storms made landfall along the Gulf Coast, 5 of those in Louisiana alone. But somehow, we managed to dodge them all, except for Tropical Storm Beta.
Right behind me, well, that's Matagorda Bay, and as you can see, it is not very happy right now. Rough seas for sure out there in the bay.
Our most nerve-wracking close call came in August. Category 4 Hurricane Laura roared ashore just across the border in Louisiana, packing 150-mile-per-hour winds and an 18-foot storm surge. Because it's been nearly 90 years since a Category 4 hurricane made landfall in southeast Texas, the extreme hurricane devastation caused by Laura is outside our realm of experience.
So hopefully the people in the way of that storm surge got out of town.
We were intending to stay, and kind of at the 11th hour, my daughter came and was crying and begging us to leave. And so about 7:30 the evening that Laura was coming toward the coast, we ended up evacuating and going to Pearland, staying with some friends.
Daryl Helton and his wife Melinda are Gulf Coast hurricane veterans. Being a Galveston native, Daryl alone has experienced the impacts of Alicia and the evacuation disaster of Rita, while riding out the winds of Ike and the flood of Harvey from Pearland. Nothing prepared him for the aftermath of Laura.
I've never seen anything like it. I mean, it was unbelievable. It's hard to describe unless you actually saw it. It looked like a war zone.
Thankfully, the towering pine trees toppled by Laura missed the Helton home, but the blue tarps still strung over roofs today show that many weren't as fortunate.
I am extremely glad we got out.
Unless you have your head in the sand right now, the expectations and the forecast is for this to be a catastrophic event.
Dire warnings from the National Hurricane Center ahead of Laura's landfall mentioned an unsurvivable storm surge that could send 10 feet of water all the way into Lake Charles.
And it was a desperate attempt to get everyone out of there, and there was 100% evacuation compliance, and we didn't lose a single person from storm surge and Hurricane Laura, the greatest storm surge in Louisiana history, and we didn't lose anybody.
While a last-minute wobble to the east spared Lake Charles from the worst storm surge, the city of 77,000 bore the full wrath of Laura's extreme winds.
I was in a 13-story building, and hearing the wind trying to pull the windows out of the building where it's a creaking sound, even though I'm on the second floor, if I put a pencil on my desk, it would start rolling because the building was oscillating from the high winds. So you didn't know if the building was going to collapse.
Roger Erickson is the warning coordination meteorologist for the National Weather Service in Lake Charles. And Laura claimed his most powerful tool to identify storm threats that require warnings. Built to withstand winds of 120 miles per hour, it was no match for Laura.
I'm holding right here a piece of the old radome because Laura took out your radar. What was that like?
Yeah, it was a huge shock to come down to the office the morning after the hurricane and to see no white dome anymore up there. And not only was the dome gone, but the physical radar inside of the dome was gone as well.
Laura's winds also did extensive damage to the power grid. Most in Lake Charles had no power for 1 to 2 months, and many along the coast in Cameron Parish didn't have power restored until December. These hardships led to more people perishing in the aftermath of Laura than from the storm itself.
Here in Lake Charles, life is mostly back to normal. Buildings still bear the scars of the 2020 hurricane season, but it's a stark reminder that it could happen in Houston.
Lake Charles sits about 30 miles from the Gulf Coast, downtown Houston about 40 miles away. But the population in the Houston-Galveston corridor is nearly 7 million people, over 30 times that of the Lake Charles to Cameron corridor. A storm like Laura hitting here would cause an unprecedented amount of human suffering, financial losses, and environmental impacts.
The most dangerous and deadly part of a hurricane is the storm surge. That's all the water hurricanes push ashore as they make landfall. While the upper Texas coast has had several damaging storm surge events, we haven't had an extreme event that would overtop the seawall and devastate Galveston, but we've been close. Last year, Hurricane Laura produced an 18-foot storm surge over parts of Cameron Parish in Louisiana. What if it hadn't made that turn and instead came right for Galveston?
Yeah, had Laura really made landfall in a worst-case scenario here, it would have been an upper-level Category 4 hurricane. The winds would have been about 30 miles an hour higher than the 1900 storm. It just would have shredded much of Galveston, and then it would have put even a higher storm surge than Ike did.
Dr. Needham is a storm surge expert and Gulf Coast hurricane historian. He says that the seawall won't completely protect Galveston from an extreme storm like Laura.
We may be more vulnerable than people realize. Even though we have the seawall, which does protect us, these larger storm surge events certainly could wash over the seawall and cause a lot of damage on the island.
About 60 years ago, Carla slammed into the Texas coast near Matagorda Bay. It produced an 18-foot storm surge near Port Lavaca, but only a 10-foot surge near Galveston. And even though Hurricane Harvey's rain was record-breaking, its surge only rose to 4 feet on the island. In both cases, the 17-foot seawall was tall enough to protect Galveston. But here's something residents don't know. The seawall really isn't 17 feet tall anymore.
Well, it was built 17 feet above mean low tide, but that's only about 15 feet above mean high tide, and that was 120 years ago. So since then, the seas have risen, the island is subsiding or sinking, so the water's about 3 feet higher than it was. So right now, the seawall is only about 12 feet above mean high tide. So that's a concern. That'll put a couple of feet of salt water racing over the seawall in a really substantial storm event.
The last time Galveston was devastated by a storm surge was during the Great 1900 hurricane. Somewhere between 6,000 and 8,000 people were killed by the storm.
What would happen if a major hurricane were to make landfall in the worst possible location? We show you just how far inland the storm surge would go when It Could Happen Here returns.
When it comes to hurricane names, you'll never have to worry about the Greek alphabet again. The World Meteorological Organization, which is in charge of hurricane names worldwide, will no longer use the Greek alphabet when the Atlantic runs out of the 21 names for the year. Now, the organization believed the Greek alphabet put the emphasis on the letter and not on the storm's danger. Also, the 2020 storm letter names Zeta, Eta, and Theta sounded too much alike and caused some confusion. So starting this year, if there are more than 21 Atlantic storms, the next names will come from a new supplemental list headed by Adria, Braylon, Caridad, followed by Deshaun, and ending with Will.
I'm here on Stewart Beach on the east end of Galveston Island. On the morning of September 13th, 2008, Hurricane Ike's eye came right over this area, giving the Bolivar Peninsula a tremendous storm surge and catastrophic damage. There was no seawall or barrier island in place to protect the Bolivar Peninsula from the 12-foot wall of water and destructive waves that moved through that day. Had Ike hit farther down the coast, the seawall would have provided some protection in Galveston, but there would still have been a very large loss of life from drowning if people didn't evacuate.
We could see water level at least, I think, say 4 to 5 feet higher than an Ike.
especially a storm. If the eye goes in south of Galveston, that would be the worst case for us.
So what exactly is the worst case scenario? How about a huge storm the size of Ike, but make it a Cat 5 24 hours prior to landfall? Make it a slow-moving storm, say less than 12 miles per hour, and then bring it in down the coast from Galveston, say around Jamaica Beach. What would a monster like that do?
Had Laura made a direct impact here, that would have put a lot of storm surge over the seawall, huge waves, a lot of the smaller businesses and restaurants and stuff right on the seawall. I'm afraid some of those buildings would have just been washed away.
Wow. Washed away, you say?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we actually see photographs from the 1915 hurricane, which came in as a weaker hurricane than the 1900 storm. But you can actually see, although we had a seawall, a lot of homes were washed away. Getting into these 14, 16-foot storm surges, a lot of buildings, I think, on this island would be washed away.
And you might be surprised just how far inland the salt water would reach in an extreme event. I'm here along the Gulf Freeway at FM 528, right underneath the NASA bypass. If Hurricane Ike had made landfall about 20 miles west of the city of Galveston down the coast, the storm surge from that system would have come in through Galveston Bay, went through Clear Lake, and then come up Clear Creek and just barely made it to the field behind me. However, in an extreme hurricane event, say a Category 5, a large one coming in down the coast from the city of Galveston, well, that would have put about 3 to 6 feet of seawater into this location right here, and that would be devastating for this area. Communities from League City to Santa Fe to Angleton would be inundated. And in Houston, those of us near the Ship Channel and Buffalo Bayou would need to seek higher ground. An event this extreme has never happened. But now that we know it's a possibility, we need to do all we can to prepare.
It's just a very frustrating situation for everyone out here.
When the next big storm is headed to Houston, parts of the area will need to evacuate. And that, of course, brings up memories of the largest, most disorganized, and deadliest evacuation in Houston history. Rita.
I just want to get out from here. There's no gas in town and there's nothing over here.
Nearly 100 deaths were blamed on the evacuation process alone. And even among those who made it safely, it was memorable for all the wrong reasons.
It's just a disaster, man. With the Rita hurricane, everybody just terrified.
Julie Gaywith spent 22 hours on the road, evacuating from Pearland to Marble Falls with 4 rescue animals and her mother, who had just finished chemo. Here's what she remembers.
A lot of yelling, a lot of people, gesturing, people really like being aggressive towards each other, hitting each other's bumpers, trying to get people out of the way.
And a local official said, if you don't have any reason to be in Houston, leave. And people did. They hit the grocery stores, they cleared the shelves, so people who were planning on riding out the storm also didn't have any resources from the grocery store, and a lot of those people had to leave too. So it created the perfect storm for a mass and panicked evacuation, which we had never seen before.
Thankfully, a lot of lessons have been learned since that evacuation, and both the infrastructure and the technology has advanced.
I-10, I-45, and US 290 have all been reconstructed to handle more traffic volumes. We encourage people to use those main evacuation routes because we staff them.
Now, that's not a minor detail, because having those official evacuation routes staffed means people on hand to help change tires, fill up cars with gas, and remove stalled vehicles from the roadways. As for our smaller back roads on the evacuation routes, well, that's where some of the new technology comes in.
We manually control signals in the more rural areas to make sure they're green so traffic can continue flowing. We ask people that want to evacuate just because of a power outage to wait until the storm passes. Give those people who are in the more southern areas that see the storm surge to evacuate first and to have that time to get out of town.
This ReadyHarris.org map shows those evacuation zones broken down by zip code, and it's a really useful tool. Notice those coastal areas are first, then Zone A in yellow, Zone B here in green, eventually Zone C. Then you have Houston and areas north and west, which aren't even in an evacuation zone.
When I heard that there was going to be a flood, I thought it was going to be bad.
These students remember Hurricane Harvey, what they went through, and their message of hope when it could happen here returns.
Those rain gauges are filling up, especially on the west side of town. That is where we're seeing some of the highest rainfall totals. Again, this is radar estimates.
When I heard that there was going to be a flood, I thought it was going to be bad. It's going to be a bad flood.
When Hurricane Harvey made landfall, unimaginable floodwaters pushed through Creech Elementary and its surrounding communities. It was one of the hardest hit areas in Katy.
It was almost unbelievable, where you're looking at a picture and thinking, that's my school home, that's my school family, and is that actually real?
Kindergarten teacher Mindy Warren was devastated.
We had a couple feet of water, I think, and it was a total loss. So they took everything out of the school, and we were out of the building for the entire school year.
Out of the building, but not out of hope.
This entire community came together to support each other and support this little school.
Little did anyone know the rebuilding process would birth a new way of building life back into a community. The destructive combination of powerful winds and excessive rain has changed the landscape of how people build and rebuild their homes.
Well, the overall changes in home construction over the last 32 years has been drastic.
Home builder and president of Long Lake Limited, Craig Jones, has been building homes across the Houston area for over 3 decades. And some of the biggest changes he sees
as a result of Hurricane Harvey is the Atlas 14 requirement based on detention capacity that we have to develop our communities to and build our homes to as well, as far as elevations of foundations.
As a result of Hurricane Harvey, builders had to increase their detention capacity to 30%. That means developers must create more area for rainwater to accumulate. The hope is this additional land will alleviate home flooding.
We're all building under the same requirements and the same code, so we're equal playing field. Unfortunately, those costs get passed on to the consumer.
Jones hopes this hurricane season will be calm and uneventful, as do the teachers and students of Creech Elementary, because they won't ever forget what Harvey did. But they did take away one very important lesson. People help those in need.
I already got through it one time, and if we have to do it again, we will all work as a community and get better.
After the record-breaking year of 2020, what does the 2021 season hold? The experts weigh in on the chances Texas gets hit by a hurricane. When It Could Happen Here returns.
Eye on the Gulf, It Could Happen Here is sponsored by Kroger. Kroger sponsors the Hurricane Tracker because we care about your safety. American Risk Insurance. Large enough to compete, small enough to care. Goya Foods. If it's Goya, it has to be good. And Air Team. For all your heating and cooling needs, let Air Team be your team.
The 2021 hurricane season could be another above-average year. Dan Kotlowski, senior meteorologist and lead hurricane forecaster at AccuWeather, agrees.
We're expecting 16 to 20 named storms, 7 to 10 hurricanes, and roughly about 3 to 5 of those could become major hurricanes.
Now, when it comes to forecasting tropical cyclones, Colorado State University meteorologist Phil Klotzbach looks at many factors. One of the most important is the El Nino Southern Oscillation pattern, more commonly known as the La Nina, El Nino, and neutral patterns.
So things are a little bit different. While the forecast numbers that we just put out are pretty similar to what we put out last year at this time. Last year, we were coming out of a borderline weak El Nino event, and the tropical Pacific was anomalously cooling, so cooling a little bit faster than normal.
That La Nina pattern last year relaxed the winds of the Atlantic Ocean. Those weaker winds give tropical systems a better chance to intensify into the record-breaking number of hurricanes.
Right now, we are basically, we're just about ready to come out of a La Nina pattern and going into what we call a neutral pattern.
A neutral pattern usually will result in more hurricanes than an El Nino pattern, but less than a La Nina pattern.
We still don't think we're going to see El Nino for this summer and fall, which is one of the reasons why the forecast is for an above-average season this year.
One of the most important questions is, where will the season's hurricanes make landfall? Hurricane forecaster Dale Link has been trying to answer that question using his own tried and true method that boasts an 81% accuracy rate over the last 20 years. He takes last year's cyclone tracks over the Gulf, including Invest, gusts, depressions, tropical storms, and short-lived hurricanes to make potential landfall zones for this season. In 2019, Dale used Barry, Imelda, and Olga's tracks to create Landfall Zone 2 for the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season. In 2020, hurricanes Hannah, Laura, Delta, and Zeta tracked into Zone 2. For the 2021 season, Link used Tropical Storm Beta's track to create Landfall Zone 1, which includes the southeast Texas coastline. So where does this leave us? On our toes and keeping a close eye on the Gulf come summer. We all know it only takes one storm to make it a bad hurricane season.
You can have a season with very few storms that is still an extremely active season for a particular part of the coast. And a classic example of that in the Houston area is 1983. We only had 4 storms all year. We only made it to the D storm in that year. But the A storm that year, Hurricane Alicia, was very damaging for the Houston metropolitan area.
The lesson is, no matter the predictions, be prepared now.
You tried to have that plan in place that's going to allow you to react to the worst case scenario. And all I'm telling people is when you come up with your hurricane plan, think of the worst case scenario. Don't think of the watered down pardon the pun, but the watered down version is not the way to think about those kinds of situations.
Now is the time to prepare. The closer a storm is to the Gulf, the harder it will be for you to find supplies. When the inevitable happens and a Category 4 hurricane returns to southeast Texas, hurricane veteran Daryl Helton has a message for those who are asked to evacuate.
Get out early. Don't wait. I have experienced waiting, and it's not the right thing to do. Get out. Don't be stubborn like me.
We still want to make sure that we are taking this very seriously over the next 24 hours because we are going to continue to see these feeder bands rolling on in with
one thing you can count on. The Eyewitness Weather Team will keep you informed on all the tropical systems that threaten the Gulf.
No official word on landfall, but it's very close and should happen within the next hour.
Whether on air, online, or on your phone, we will help keep you informed and prepared this and every hurricane season.